Hello and welcome to Stylish Chats with Creatives. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking to Stuart Amos. Stu's a creative content producer and videographer based in County Durham. Hello.
Hey, Shah, how's it going?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, good. It's so nice to meet you. We were just chatting before we press record about how you found the podcast, and you found it through a food stylist who I've worked with and who you used on another shoot. And it's just really interesting how integrated our creative worlds are, even though you're in TV and I'm in the still side.
Yeah, 100%. I think the powers of Instagram, I think, and just, you meet people through people. And I think it was Joe, actually, who I was working with last week. And I think you must have been working together, or she tagged you in something. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I love just listening to, creatives talking creatively, and then started listening to your podcast. And then, then I saw that you were looking for people to come on, and I was like, why not, basically.
Yeah, it's always good to connect with people who are on the outer rims of your network as well, because we've all got such different things to offer each other in a networking base as well. And it's always interesting to hear different people's creative journey. And that's how come I started the pod, was because I was going on set being like, how have you got to where you are? And then I thought other people have got to enjoy listening to this.
100%. I think it's, it's a nice little icebreaker, isn't it? When you when you work with people and with being on set, there's so many different people that are on set. And I think listening to different people's stories and, having that general chit chat over a cup of tea at the start or over lunch or whatever, because a lot of the time you work with people that you've never met before, obviously as you get into it and the longer you're in it, it's very rare that you come across someone you haven't worked with before or doesn't know somebody you've worked with before. But when you're in the early days, everyone's new, and those stories, and some of them are fantastic. So it's absolutely. I love listening to it.
It's nice to know. It's nice to meet a listener face to face. So how did you get into the TV producer side and videography side?
Well, to start with, it was sort of uni. I didn't study sort of film or media. I did media at GCSE, but so something I must have liked media at some point when I was a kid. But I wasn't like a keen photographer, or I didn't get cameras for birthdays or anything like that when I was a kid. I was all about football and sport, to be honest. That was kind of my childhood, was playing football, supporting Newcastle United, and wanting to be a footballer. So that's what I wanted to study. That's what I wanted to do. So I did that at college. And then very quickly realised that it wasn't what I wanted to do. It was just a hobby. I just liked, playing football on the weekends and on the evenings, and, playing five-a-side. So work-wise, it's not what I wanted to do. So after I got my qualifications at college, I took a year out, worked in retail for like a year. And then when clearing opened a year later, it was my mum actually said, what are you going to do? And I was like, I have no idea. She was like, well, what do you like? What do you like? What do you like doing? What, And I went, I don't know. I like watching the special features on sort of DVDs, and something I always liked was, finding that part of a DVD, and you don't really have those menus anymore. No one really watches DVDs anymore because it's obviously Netflix and all that sort of stuff. But, for those who are listening who don't know, there used to be special features basically where you could watch how the film was made. And I was obsessed with, seeing how these huge movies were sort of put together. And I was like, maybe it's film. Maybe that's, I could see myself, I love film, and I could see myself making film. So when clearing opened up that year and that summer, I just sort of worked my way through the list of universities that had openings in sort of film and TV production in sort of film courses. And the first one that sort of offered me a place, I just said yes. Obviously, I didn't have the background in sort of media. I had the background in sport, so they would only offer me a foundation degree. So I went on and did a year zero, and then didn't actually complete my degree. I left after sort of my sort of technically third year, but in their eyes, it was like a year two, because I did year zero, year one, year two. And then, but I actually met my now wife at university, now a third year. She'd come up from Bournemouth to complete her degree. And I was doing a lot of photos, and I was recording a lot of the performances for the performing arts students at uni at the time. Just because it was a bit like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. If I was going to film their performances, if I was going to, take pictures of their rehearsals, they would be in my short films, they would dance in my videos, they would present in my documentaries, all that sort of stuff. And that's how I met my now wife. So when we were coming to the end of the third year, she was like, Stu, I'm moving to London. I want to do the auditioning thing, the acting, dancing, singing thing. And I was like, you know what it is? I'm going to come with you, man. I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to leave uni. I'm just going to come with you, and I'm just going to bite the bullet and see what happens. Moved to London that summer, and essentially basically started a spreadsheet, and then just contacted every sort of production company that was on Google, production companies in London, and started sending my CV around. I'd had, in the 3 years at uni, I got like 2 days work on Dickinson's Real Deal when they actually came up to Carlisle. So I went down on set and was a runner. My first ever TV job was actually looking after David Dickinson's cafetiere. That was my job for a whole day, just literally making his coffee. Lovely guy, not going to lie. Really, really nice. And yeah, that was like, yeah, my first experience in sort of TV was that. And but then, like, when I was sat up in Carlisle, and I've got friends who were studying psychology or sociology and any other ology, basically, were getting more days on films or TV because they were in London and they could just go and be a runner for the day or go and be an extra or something like that. And I was like, this is really frustrating. When the opportunity come to go down, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. So then, yeah, I started a spreadsheet and was just contacting people. And funnily enough, the first company that sort of got back in touch and, you know, said, you know, there's an opportunity was a company called Line Pictures, who make Hollyoaks, but they also make Geordie Shore. And that was my first TV. Like, my first TV job was sent me straight back up north. I'd been in London for a month and I was back up north working on Geordie Shore. So, yeah, it's mad. I was like, when I got the job, I rang my mum actually, and I was like, you never guess what? She's like, what? I said, I'm coming back north. She was like, what do you mean? You've only been down a month? And I was like, no, I've got a job on Geordie Shore. She's like, no way. I mean, I'd spend every Tuesday night at uni going in pre-drinks. We had a drinking game for Geordie Shore, and now I'm all of a sudden I'm working on the show, you know. So yeah, so I came from London, you know, packed a bag and I was in Newcastle for 5-6 weeks or whatever it was, you know, working on the show from start to finish. And from there, once I was in, you kind of in, you know. So I started as a runner, and then went through about 2 years of literally doing, it was pretty much Geordie Shore, X on the Beach, Geordie Shore, X on the Beach. Those MTV shows literally back to back because it was the same crew that were doing both. Made some of my best friends, you know. Probably my longest, outside of a sort of family chat, my longest other WhatsApp group was actually a WhatsApp group called X on the Pitch, and I probably love the shout out because it's our fantasy football for all the people that have worked on X on the Beach. And so some of my best friends, some of my closest friends, some of my biggest support, you know, like through the pandemic and stuff like that was that WhatsApp group. So that was great. And then obviously meeting people, and then you obviously word of mouth, then you got in, all of a sudden you added to all of these Facebook groups where you didn't even know they existed because they're private. And then, you know, I kind of just went my way up the ladder from there, really, you know. I was doing runner jobs, and then sort of the next rung up from that was what you call a researcher, which is basically taking like what you call story notes, writing down what's happening, how they can weave that web of a reality story, if you like. And then from there into assistant producing, which was when I got my hands on the camera and shooting, because I loved shooting at uni, and I found a real sort of passion for it. I mean, I can talk, you know, I can talk basically. So when I was at uni, so many people were so nervous. So I was always the one that was, oh, can you just ring this person? Can you just ring that person? Can you just ask permission to shoot here? Can you contact the local police service because we're using a prop gun and they need to know? And I was always that person. So I never got a chance to do what I actually loved doing, which was, you know, camera or edit or something like that. You know, it was the sort of the talking side of things as opposed to the you know, the creative side of things. And it was kind of frustrating. So, I met a guy in TV, a guy called Ricky, who really took me under his wing with really sort of teaching me how to operate for broadcast, essentially, and taught me how to use, you know, new cameras that were coming out that was going to make like our lives easier, mirrorless cameras and things like that, as opposed to these huge cameras that you've got on your shoulder, you know, really sort of condensing that kit, you know. So when I started with him, I worked with him on tattoo fixes, was when we first met out in Greece. We were doing tattoo fixes on holiday, and essentially our job was to shoot the backstory. So anybody, I don't know if you ever watched the show, but anybody going into the studio, anybody going into the studio, they've got those the stories of how they got the bad tattoo, essentially. And my job and Ricky's job, he was the sort of the lead producer or shooting producer, and I was sort of his assistant, if you like. And it was our job to basically come up with a concept of like a script, basically, and then find the props, contact them, you know, find a date, go and film with them and recreate their bad tattoo, basically. And And that was one of the funnest jobs I think I did in TV, because I got a full 360 view of what it was like to put like a VT together. So that was from like
Yeah.
sort of scripting right through to like sitting in the edit and watching the editor put it together, essentially. And it was class, you know. And I had someone for the first time who, not that the other guys in sort of reality TV, you know, because it's so fast paced, it was like he could teach as much as he could teach, but it was because it was moving so quick. It was really hard to then like I actually spend a real amount of time sort of teaching somebody how to do something. You kind of just got to learn. But for this was like, it was an 18-month job. I did like 3 series back to back, and we were in the office and then out on the shoot, and in the office planning for a bit, then out on the shoot. So I really had that time, and he really took that time to sort of teach me how to do stuff, and I absolutely loved it. It was class, you know. And then seeing it on TV and going, I wrote that line, you know, or I captured that bit of B-roll that they're using for the first time. My stuff's being actually shown on TV, and you know, that's actually my arm as the bad tattoo artist, because I've got tattoos. So he would use my arm as the fake arm of giving the bad tattoo. So the amount of times I've been, you know, on telly as the villain, as the bad tattoo artist, it was mad. But I loved it. And then from there, you know, then all of a sudden I've got shoot and broadcast credits, and then I was then on camera quite a bit, and then, you know, basically it was on that sort of upward trajectory from there. I was going on, you know, job to job. I was shooting then VTs, and I was sort of broadening that sort of portfolio of stuff I was working on. I wasn't just working on, you know, the MTV stuff. I was working on, you know, like I say, the tattoo fixers, and then I was moving away from reality, and I was going into like ITN and shoot and helping shoot like VTs for the National Lottery, or, you know, I was working on Children in Need and filming like the behind the scenes of the Big EastEnders number. So it was like I was getting a really good, you know, portfolio together of the stuff I was shooting and the range of things I was shooting. And it kind of, like I said, it was just on that upward trajectory from there, really. And then obviously, as we all know, the sort of pandemic come, basically, which kind of just put a bit of a disruption on all that, really, in terms of things just kind of stopped.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, because I was saying to you before, my friend is in costume as well, in wardrobe, and it just stopped. Like, she was also pregnant at the time, and she was just like, what is going on? It's just completely stopped. So how did you find that time? Like, it must have been so hard to have been on jobs back to back. And then I remember getting the phone calls going like, work's not in, we can't work. So how did you feel about it when COVID hit and that massive first meeting came?
Yeah, I mean, so if we just rewind back just like to the summer of 2019, basically, me and my wife Louise, she also got a job on TV. The acting thing kind of just was, I mean, I thought TV world and I thought the creative world was difficult. Like, actors have it sort of next level. Like kudos to any actor out there, any voice artist, whatever, you know, because that is the next level sort of tough world, man, in terms of the constant rejection of stuff. And, you know, we sometimes get it of like, oh, have I said something wrong and I'm not going to get booked again, or something like that, or have I fucked up and, you know, have I said the wrong thing to the wrong person and am I going to be blacklisted, all that sort of stuff. But actors don't even, they just don't even hear back. And I'm like, geez. So she was sort of, she gave it about a year, something like that, 6 months to a year. Doing my girl, she got into TV sort of, so she's about 6 months to a year behind me on the sort of that career in TV. And then 2019, we were looking to buy, and we were like, London is expensive. So we ended up, you know, I'm from the Northeast, you know, housing prices are so much cheaper. I was shooting, Louise was on location quite a lot. So we were like, let's buy, and let's buy up north, because we don't need to be in London anymore. We're quite well established, you know, we're getting booked quite a bit, you know, we're always on location. It doesn't really matter where we are. So we bought in August 2019. And again, I was out on location. Like you say, I was back to back and it was class. And then sort of start of 2020, I booked the first winter series of Love Island over in South Africa. So I flew over to South Africa on the 4th of Jan 2020, and I was over there. And that's when all of these like things, there was more and more stories about the pandemic were sort of coming out. And we were over there going like, man, like, what is this? You know, people were taking this, oh, COVID, you know, and, you know, it was a bit of a joke at the time. You know, people didn't really take it that seriously. And I flew back on 20th of Feb 2020, and then, you know, within a month we were fully locked down, and I was like, what is going on? Like, this is mad. And we were chatting in the green room before, and for me, 2020 was going to be, or would have been, financially sort of the best year in terms of bookings. Like, I was booked from that job on the 4th of Jan which usually winter's pretty tough in sort of the reality TV world and TV world. It goes quite quiet until like everyone gets their budgets again. Sort of April time, it starts to pick back up, and right throughout the summer. So if you're booked until like November and you can see yourself through Christmas and Jan, you're normally all right. So for me to be booked in January and then right the way through to sort of back end of August, September, I was like, mate, this is amazing. And I managed to book. There's a cricket tournament called the 100. And it was the first year that was supposed to be starting. And I was like, mate, I'm into sports. Like, I love sport. I'm mixing the two worlds. That has been my passion from being a kid. It was like, my initial passion was sport. Then it was film. I was like, I'm going to mix these two together. I'm going to do all this social content. This is going to be amazing. Like, I'm really excited. And, domino effect. I got one call, then another call, then another call, then another call. And I was like, oh my God. Like, what the fuck, basically. Obviously panic stations, mortgage breaks and all that sort of stuff. We were lucky we had a bit of savings, and there was a lot of frustration with some of the bigger corporations within TV not looking after their freelancers and not treating them properly. And, some of the smaller corporations come out with in a really, really, really positive light of how well they looked after their freelancers, whereas some of the bigger companies didn't necessarily do that, which is a shame. And I was like, this is just crazy. Like, it's nothing I've ever seen. From there, to be honest, like, being completely honest, like, I was in a pretty, like, to start with, the first, couple of weeks of knowing that all my jobs had gone, I was in a pretty, like, low place. Like, I was back to, applying for jobs at supermarkets. So I was like, what the fuck has my last 10 years been? I've done 3 years at uni. I've done 6.5, 7 years in TV. I've worked my arse off, and now I'm back to look at and getting rejected from jobs at like the Co-op and Sainsbury's. My last job, one of my uni was Sainsbury's, and I was like, oh my fucking God, and I actually at the time put a status out, I think it was on Facebook or something like that. And, I had a lot of, TV friends messaging me going, Stu, mate, thanks so much for posting that, because it's literally exactly how I'm feeling. I was getting phone calls, and like, there was these, blokes who, I thought were tough. They were like cameramen, or they were like, these producer directors who've got these, with want of a better word, like quite big egos, and they're like these blokes, and all of a sudden they're messaging me going or ringing me and be like, Stu, mate, like, I feel exactly the same. Like, this is mad. And I was like, yeah, I think I just need to be honest sometimes about how you're feeling, and it was pretty tough. And then my sister actually is a frontline worker, still is. A lot of my family are. Outside of me, I'm the only one sort of in creative industries. Other than my dad, who's a tradesman, he's a plasterer. But everyone else in my family are like sort of, my sister, like I say, is a frontline worker. My mum's a social worker, has been a social worker for years. My older brother's in child protective services. My younger brother's a mental health nurse, as is his wife. So they're all,
wow.
They were massively in there with, through that whole thing. And my sister messaged and was like, Stu, if you need a bit of money just to keep you ticking over, because I understand, what's happened. And she was like, she was working at a care home, like a local care home. And she was like, a lot of our tenants, our residents are, they're shielding, or they can't come out their room. We need to deliver the meals to them because the restaurant's not open. Do you fancy just, if you need a bit of money, there's a job there. And I was like, absolutely. I'd much rather do that and feel like I was giving a little bit of something back. I know I was getting paid to do it, but literally it covered my mortgage. It was, it wasn't the best paid, but it was covering my mortgage for a little bit, and it, again, seeing, giving a little bit something back and having a bit of a conversation with these old folks, who are literally not leaving their room, going in and, helping someone sign up to Netflix or something like that, and just having a bit of chat with these oldies, was class. And I to be honest, it really sort of like give me a bit of perspective, about, where I was in life, basically. And coming out with that, it was like, yeah, I now know what, it means to why I'm doing what I'm doing and stuff like that. And it was for family, it was for moments, it was for, you realize who's around you and things like that as well. So there's a lot of learnings I took from COVID. I think a lot of us did, but me for sure, I really realized what was important.
Yeah, I think we were discussing before we hit record as well about how I felt the same. Like me and my husband definitely felt the same. I didn't pick up any work because I was asthmatic, so I wasn't allowed to work. And in turn, I caught COVID 3 times anyway, so I may as well have gone to work. But the pandemic definitely showed us like to slow down a little bit and appreciate the people around us. And, it's great to go to work back to back all the time, but you also need to say yes, like we were saying, to go to the weddings, the christenings, if you can, because money's not everything. Those connections are everything, aren't they?
I think we all get absolutely 100%, and I think we all get into that bad habit of, you turn down, because you think when you think about it, you're in that sort of selfish mode of like, am I really going to turn down a 6-week job because I can't have 2 days off to go to a pre-wedding and then a wedding for the day, or like a christening for the day, or a birthday, or a night out, or whatever, but they're the moments, when you look back, they're the moments that you're going to be like, well, I actually should have just gone. And they're the friends you've kind of lost, or they understand. I've seen in the TV world, I've seen relationships break down because, someone's taking a job back to back, or, someone's working in a gallery environment and they can't answer the phone, and they've got their partner on the other end of it they've come off of a shift of 12 hours and they've got like 20 odd missed calls from their partner because the partner just doesn't get it. Like, I've been really lucky that I had, that Louise has been super understanding of what I do. But I understand that not everyone has either, and I think those tough moments, and you think, oh man, what am I doing? And COVID really sort of highlighted some of the things that I wanted from sort of life and my career as well, and what was making me happy. And for me, during COVID, my missus was like, Louise is the same as you, Shai. She's asthmatic, so she was put on the shielding and wasn't allowed to leave and all that sort of stuff. So I was coming back from the sort of a care home in a really sort of high risk environment, and I was like, had a red bag at the door, and I was literally stripping off at the door, and then the bag, she would come down with a mask and with gloves on and take the bag to the washing machine and wash it, and I would run straight for the shower. And I think back and I was like, that is mad. But then because, I've got that creative side of me who needs some sort of outlet, whether it's, writing a script, or whether it's, I don't know, filming something, editing something, or just even watching something. And so for me in COVID, I was like, said to Louise, I said, should we just start a podcast? So we started this thing called Cup of Tea Time, and we literally just sat and had a cup of tea once a week and just sort of chatted about how the week was. I would say to Louise how the shops were, because she hadn't been in the supermarket since the pandemic, about the one-way systems and all this sort of stuff. And that was a really good opportunity for us to just communicate and talk throughout the whole thing, talk about how we're feeling, be honest and all that. And then it also like just kept me, it meant I was still editing all the time. It meant I was doing something different. I was learning how to mix audio. I was learning how to mix music. So I was learning at the same time. So yeah, there was a lot of, like I said before, man, there's a lot of learnings come out from that whole experience, and what was important.
Yeah, and I think it was good. It sounds like it was such a good thing for you to start the podcast as well. So at least you guys had a creative outlet. Because during COVID, I went back to like my art roots and just started painting and drawing, and I was down the allotment. I was like a little retired person, just like happy in my own little world. But it was hard, especially like going to the shops and stuff. And I definitely had a couple of panic attacks and things. And when stuff started opening up again, I was like scared of flying again. And, and it was very isolating, but also very like, it's one of those experiences that hopefully we'll never have to go through again. 100%. But because everyone was doing it from their own point of view, it was so wild. And like, you chatting about when you came in from work and were stripping off straight away, and like my other half was the same. He was coming in from his he worked for Openreach, so he was in and out of people's houses sorting out the internet, and the internet suddenly became even more important than what it was before because people were working from home. And then he'd come in and he'd be like, don't touch me, I need to go have a shower, like, strip off and stuff. And then then it was just the fear, wasn't it? Because nobody really knew what it was or what could happen. And it's such a shame as well, listening to you then as well about the TV companies, about some of them who didn't look after you guys properly and things. And I'd heard this anyway, and we had a similar situation with some of the studios. And I think everybody was trying to manage the unexpected as best they could. And certain people, I think, just didn't manage it as well, or just didn't see value in the creative outlet. We were all looking on the internet or watching TV or whatever, and that all has to be a creative person who's done something.
100%. And I think there was loads. I don't know whether it's just our little sort of bubble that we're in. We're all got creative friends, and they're all posting at a time. And people were saying, the music you're listening to, has been, and the amount of people that like we're sort of responsible for that, for you being able to listen to that track, or, you know, that movie you're watching, or that TV series you're watching and listing it. You know, remember the government at the time put out that marketing posted about, you know, change your career if you're in creative. And it's like, well, this one thing that you've posted, there's like a good 7-8 different creatives that's put that one little billboard together. You know, there's a graphic designer, there's an illustrator, there's this, there's X, there's what, you know, there's all of these people, there's a copywriter that's written the copy for it. So, you know, that's an absolute fucking joke, basically. And I remember just being, for a long time, very, very sort of frustrated and angry at the treatment. And, you know, when people were saying, oh, you're just being a bit, you know, and it's that not a bit entitled. And I'm like, fuck off, mate. I've worked really, really hard to get to this point, you know, and there's a reason I'm frustrated, you know. And then you just push through it, you know, and ultimately I went back to TV after that. You know, the first phone call I got, you coming back? Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm full of hot air sometimes about, you know, when I get myself wound up. And yeah, the first phone call I got back, I was straight back into it. You know, I was back and they'd sort of changed the sort of the stuff. You know, rather than it being out on location, you know, it was a lot of gallery stuff was being made, and I ended up working on The Circle for Netflix and for Channel 4 or E4.
Yeah.
I worked in that gallery environment, so I was in that, and, you know, and that was all sort of like fully, you know, had all of the partitioning and stuff like that. You know, you weren't even next to each other; you were just all in this like little glass boxes essentially, and it was constantly cleaned and things like that. So I got a lot of gallery experience, especially from doing Love Island just before as well. It really sort of helped because I had that gallery experience. So I did The Circle, and then again it was just gallery jobs back to back basically after that. Yeah, I did The Circle, and then I did a show called Celebs Go Dating, but it was the mansion version. So rather than them going out in restaurants and going on dates, everywhere was closed. So they did a mansion, and they sent them all to a mansion in Guildford. And I worked on that. And it was, again, I was like, oh, this is good. I remember why, you know, I was seeing all the people that I'd been working with for years, and I've seen all my friends, and I was like, mate, this is such a good chance to catch up, you know, and see people and you know, get to that social, the social part of life was back, you know. And then 2021, again, you know, really good sort of, the year was like mapping out to be really good again. You know, I had a job booked over in Panama, and I was going to be flying out to there for a bit, and I was like, oh, mate, this is sweet. Hopefully we're out the other end. And then lockdown 2, basically, or 2.0 or 3.0, whatever it was at the time. I think we went through several.
Yeah.
And then the same thing happened, to be honest. The same thing happened, you know, my jobs were starting to get cancelled again. And I said to Louise, I was like, oh, I can't do this again. You know, I think my energy's zapped. You know, I think my energy's zapped for this now. As much as I loved it, and as much as I'm missing my friends, and I'm missing doing this. Like, I think, you know, my sister at the time was pregnant as well. So I had a nephew on the horizon. I was like, I really don't want to miss, you know, some of the things that I've been basically the people that had got me through that whole situation was family and my immediate friends up here, mainly my family. So I was like, I'm not going to, you know, sacrifice more of my time and miss out on more of life with my family than I have been for the last 6.5 years. As good as it's been, and as much as I've traveled, I've done Thailand and Bali and Australia, and I was like, there's not much more I can get out of this now, to be honest. I'm just missing things now. So when it started to happen again, I was like, I'm going to look for something full time. So then I just started doing a bit of networking in the Northeast and seeing what was around, looking at some creative agencies and updating my CV. And yeah, that's how I kind of went from freelancing to sort of full time. And I've been full time since, you know, Feb 2021, really. So coming up 3 years.
It's really good because I think some people have like held out, myself included, in the freelance world. And it's so good that you found something full time that you're enjoying and like equally as passionate about. And I also see your point of view of, you know, how many times do you go abroad for work before it becomes a chore, and you're like, oh great, I've missed that again, I've missed that, Jesus, like I've missed all of the family things that are going on.
Yeah. And I think to start with, when I was a bit younger, you know, when I was being a bit more selfish, you know, it was like, this is amazing, you know, I'm in Thailand and I'm in, you know, I'd say, like I was saying before, I'm in Bali and I'm in this and I'm that. But it got to the point where I was like, oh, I think I'd rather be home. And I probably sound like an absolute miserable prick, to be honest, because I'd love to be in Bali and I'd love to be this, and people looking at my Instagram were like, mate, you're traveling all over and it's amazing. And I'm thinking, yeah, but you're not seeing the other side of it. I'm working 12 to 14 to 15 hour days, 6 days a week. So the one day I'm off, you know, I can't be asked to go and do anything. I probably just looked out my balcony and gone down to the pool and got pissed, to be honest. Like, that's kind of, and then you're back into work again for the next 6 days. And again, you know, your energy when I was a bit younger and first doing it, I was like, this is amazing. This is like, this is a working holiday. This is like the life, you know. And as I was getting old, I mean, I'm only 33 now, but as I was getting older, I was like, oh mate, there was things that were becoming more and more important, which was, like I say, family and home. And that's when I was like, I'm not motivated by the things I was motivated by before. Because I can actually, if I worked full time, I can, have my sick pay if I'm ill. I can, book my holidays in advance and get my 25 days a year and know I'm getting paid when I'm away. Because sometimes when you're in that freelance world, I mean, you'll still feel it with being freelance. And I've listened to some of the podcasts, and there's some freelancers that come on and like, I would never go back to full time. And everyone's different, and everyone finds their comfort in what it is they're doing. And for me, it was, when you were freelancing, you were taking time off, but then you're also taking time off and missing out on money. So not only are you not working for 2 weeks, you haven't got 2 weeks pay coming at the end, whereas now I'm working full time and I can take 2 weeks off and I know I've got the exact same pay at the end of the month. And for me, that become, a little bit more important. So yeah, that's kind of the balance I found was in full time. So yeah.
Yeah, but I think the experience you got before it, everything leads you to where it is now, doesn't it? So I think there's definitely, I probably couldn't do full time. I would if it was the right job, but I'm very picky now in my old age. But I say old age, I'm only 35, 36. I can't remember, 35. So yeah, I think you're right. Some people want the comfort of being in full time and just knowing where they're at every week and knowing what they're doing and, having that stability. And then some people thrive off of not knowing where they're at next week, really, don't they? So, but it's
100%.
nice you've had the choice of both.
100%. And like I say, I've experienced both. And for me, and again, some people have become completely different. They've gone from full time to freelance, back to full time, and then would never go back to freelancing, or they've gone from freelancing to full time and we're like, I really want to go back to freelancing. I've listened to some of the guys on here who have said, I would never go back to full time again. Freelancing is. There was a guest that you had on recently, one of the graphic designers that you had, I can't remember her name, but she was saying, to give her balance with the kids and stuff like that, and that's fair. You do whatever's going to make you happy, whether that's full time, whether that's freelancing, whether that's fixed term contracts, whether that's retainers, whatever it is you need to do. Whatever's making you feel comfortable and happy, then just do it. And everyone's different. And for me, I'm just finding at this point in time, I might be different in 2 years, but right now I'm finding a lot of comfort in, knowing I can work, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and have my evenings, my weekends to see my nephew, to, talk about starting a family and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I'm in a pretty happy place right now, which is great.
Yeah, it sounds like you are as well. And it sounds like your journey is incredible, and the way you just like pushed yourself to go down to London and just go, do you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to give it a bash. I think sometimes we forget, I mean, as well, as you get older, you end up with more responsibilities and you just think a little bit more before you do stuff as well. But when you're younger, and to just go with like that and just go, sod it, I'm going, like, that's quite courageous.
Absolutely, I get it from my mum, to be honest, and she'll love me saying that. My mum's always said, be selfish while you can, essentially. And when you've got no responsibilities, that's the one time you can really be selfish. Whether it's kids or a dog or an elderly nan that you're looking after. Like my wife looked after a nan for a long time. So we were lucky that we could be selfish when we could be selfish, because at any moment things can change. So take those opportunities. So when the opportunity for London came, my mum was like, "Fucking do it." Like, go do it. And I was like, you can always come home. And I was like, yeah, because not everyone has that either. Not everyone has that fallback or the support from family. You can just come back. So I was really lucky that I did have a huge support around me to push me and go do it. The travel side of things, my mum was like an army brat basically when she was a kid. So she traveled the world, and she said, if you can travel, go see it, go experience different cultures and all that sort of stuff. So when it was just a no brainer really to do that. And just to go and see what happens. And it's got me to where I'm like sat here talking to you. If I hadn't done that, I probably would never have found you on it, like saw you on Instagram and be having this conversation. So it's mad how that world can work out sometimes.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that, because I'm finding this world is small and crazy and brilliant all at once. Because when you were speaking about posting your status on social media during COVID and being a bit vulnerable and people reaching out to you, I've had a similar thing on LinkedIn recently. So maybe about a month ago, I posted about like work being quite dry, and like if needed, if there was a full-time job that I wanted or that was around, like just asking basically for my network to see if there's anything around. And out of that, I've ended up having so many chats, and so many people have messaged me and been like, oh, it's not just me. Oh, I'm not on my own. But not everybody wants to say it publicly, which is fair enough. But the creative network is so supportive, and the community is so nice. And I think that's what I found the last like few weeks, is just people coming out of the woodwork and going like, hey, do you want a coffee? Do you want to go and bounce ideas off each other? What about this? What about this? Do you want to test? Do you want to do that? And like, when everybody's in a similar kind of feeling, we all kind of reach to each other for a little creative hug.
100%. It's comfort in numbers, isn't it? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
Fair play. Like, if you feel comfortable enough to put that vulnerable post out, you have no idea if that's going to help somebody, or if someone's just going to reach out, or you just, if anything, even if it's just for you, just to be able to like get it off your chest. And if you're comfortable doing it, do it. But like you say, the creative industry are like some of the most like-minded, nice, lovely, genuine people. Who are all experiencing or will have experienced the same things that you're going through or you have been through. And I think, and what you were saying, and I think sometimes like the word nice is so underrated, I think. A friend said that to me, he had it in his status and it was like, nice is underrated. And I think it's so true. Like, just being nice to people, like you say, taking them up on a coffee or offering them to go for coffee, or, if I see someone, whether it's someone from school on Facebook, I don't really go on Facebook that much now, but if a lot of my school friends and that are on Facebook since I moved back up to the Northeast, and if people are struggling, or if they put a vulnerable post out, like it takes 5 minutes of your time just to drop a message and say, mate, I hope you're all right, and I'm only up the road, give us a shout, I'll have, do you want to go for a cuppa or something like that? And I think that energy, and that time, I think if you can just offer it up, I think just do it, because I think it means more to other people than I think people realize.
Yeah, I agree. And I think definitely just offering a hand, even if somebody doesn't take it, can make somebody feel like they're supported. And that's nice. Sometimes you just need somebody else to go, I'm here if you need an ear, or if you want a bit of a moan, then just sling me a text. And sometimes that's all you need, is a vent, or, just for me to chat to other creatives and be like, oh, are you feeling like this? And they're going, oh yeah, absolutely. It's not just you, and you're like, oh, thank God I didn't fuck up the last time I was in a studio.
Exactly. And I think sometimes, and I've heard some of the guys who've been on here, say like how lonely and how isolated it can be sometimes, when you are chasing, the next job, and, especially with what you do, usually there's only one of you, or there's two of you, any one job. So really it's kind of, you're never really on set together. So that little community you've built within what you guys do, you're very rarely on set at the same time. I was talking to Joe about this last week about food stylists, they all know each other, but they've never actually met, because you're just rotating around all these different shoots. And I think, it can get, and it can get, pretty isolating. And I think it's important, even if it is just a bitch for half an hour, do you know what I mean, about something, and just bitch, and then come home and just realize, oh, that was nice, So yeah, whatever you can get out of those conversations, just if someone offers you to go for a coffee, I think just go, and it might be something, it might even be for them,
Yeah, that's it. Like, friends of mine, we've all been chatting and voice noting each other and being like, oh, what about this idea? And what about this idea? Because that happens, doesn't it? When you're freelance and you've got time on your hands and you're a creative, you sling ideas out to each other and you're like, I wonder if this shit will stick, or I wonder if this shit will stick. And then a couple of my friends have been like, no, that's weird, Charlotte. Why would you think that? Why would you do that idea?
I mean, the amount of different, agencies, companies, ideas that me and friends have said, let's start this, whether it's a theatre company, or whether it's a marketing agency, or whether it's like a videography company, or whatever, the amount of, there's so many different conversations about, should we start this? Should we do this? And for all the good intentions, it never happens. But it's nice to have the conversations, because it's just like you say, that creative outlet at the time. And I love those conversations.
Yeah, me too. And it gives you time to like bounce those ideas and just be like, oh yeah, okay, like this is good, this needs fine tuning, this needs a bit more work. And it's part of having that creative network as well, isn't it? And even if it's not in your realm, like one of my friends is a retoucher, so she does stuff that I can't even fathom doing, because Adobe Photoshop just blows my mind. So she'll show me stuff and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I'm like her biggest hype woman because I'm just love everything.
Yeah.
And then when we're talking about styling stuff, she's the same. She's like, oh, I didn't realize that was a thing. This is so cool. And, and it's just nice to have those connections with people. And a lot of them have only come from me having this podcast as well, I will say.
Yeah, which is amazing. And it's like I was saying at the start, that's why I like listening to, this podcast, because you're listening to different people who do different things, but ultimately all love what they do. And I think it's just great just to listen to, creatives just chat. I think there's just something nice about it. I've been listening to it on the way to work after you reached out. I was like, I'm going to, and something I'll do, I just go and just binge a couple of the old episodes and just, I've always loved the podcast. So, and hearing people, because there's things, even if they're older episodes, there's still things in there that you're taking from it, or there's similar journeys that people have been on, or, the ups and downs, because I think we can all get caught up in that world of, social media and how things are perceived, in when actually there's a reality behind the person posting, you can get caught up in your Gary V's of the world, or what's his face that runs Gymshark. They look like these fantastic entrepreneurs who got everything right and everything's going well. He started in his garage and now he's a multi-billionaire and his company's worth $1 billion or whatever. But really, like, hearing some of the realer stories and some of the guys that you've had on here, and the ups and downs of their journeys, and it's not all just sort of sunshine and rainbows. I think it's really refreshing to hear like the real stories, as opposed to the bullshit you see sometimes on social media.
Yeah, and sometimes the highlight reel, which we all love a good highlight reel, but
100%.
without the downs, you don't get the highs, do you? So, it is interesting to chat to people as well. And this is what we were saying before we recorded. This whole podcast came from me being the chatty one that just went, oh, how did you get into that over a brew? And then, people were having these conversations with me and I'm like, surely other people enjoy finding out how creatives got in the role, because our jobs are so weird. Like, if somebody said to me at 15, you'd be styling still life things for, big supermarkets, I'd be like, what? Is that even a job?
I mean, there was one of your guests on the podcast that you had on, and I can't remember the person's name. Forgive me. But they basically were told exactly the same things. I think it was the guy that runs Ahoy, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, Mark. So, and I think he was talking about, or was it one of the graphic designers? It might have been Mark, one of the illustrators you had on. But they were saying about, they basically were really into graphic design when they were at school. And they got told exactly the same thing I got told, basically. I really like graphic design. So we were like a design, like arts college, basically, school. And we had like DT, so design technology. And one of them was graphic design. And I loved drawing buildings, basically. And I loved like drawing the blueprints and sort of drawing it and seeing it all come together and all that sort of stuff. And the first thing they said was, you're going to be an architect. And I was like, okay, cool. So I was like, I'm going to be an architect. And I was like, I had no idea it took 7 years to be an architect for a start. One, it's fucking hard. And there's a lot of science behind it as well. And I was a decent student, B's and C's. I was never an A star, never A's or anything like that. I was kind of middle of the road. I just did all right. I just did okay. I got through it. Because I was always off wanting to do something else, play football or be in my drama group or whatever. So the fact that the person was told exactly the same thing and pushed towards sort of architecture, and I was like, they should have told me to do graphic design. And especially now when I see how many graphic design jobs there are out there now, I'm like, you fucked me over basically, because you're not advising these people properly. And I think it's really frustrating that schools don't educate on the opportunities within the creative industries, in terms of, like, my dad, for example, he's a plasterer, right? And during COVID, he put me a new kitchen in because he was furloughed from the building firm he worked for. He did me a new kitchen, he did my new bathroom, he built me a new office, all of this sort of stuff. And I was like, mate, if he could have gone down the film route, and if he was in set design or something like that, or set build, like, the guy could be earning an absolute wedge on like some of the biggest Hollywood movies out there. Do you know what I mean? But no one tells these people that. They see them as like, and I don't mean, please don't see this as any disrespect to anyone who does a trade. I think it's highly skilled in what they do, but I think the education system see these people as like, they're not educated, so they're going to just go and do a trade. And they'll just push them down like they're going to be a plumber, they're going to be a bricklayer, they're going to be a joiner. And I think, mate, there's so much more skills within those trades, because it's such a highly skilled thing, of how these carpenters put things together, I watch my dad work, and I'm like, me, there's a lot of science behind it as well. There's a lot of math behind it. And I think, mate, it's so wasted. And that's just one, example of, how you take one thing and sort of, use those skills and put it into the creatives. And I think then schools need to be better at, doing that and saying to people, there's these opportunities. And I think, like you were saying before, people talking about it on this podcast about how you can get into it. If there's a kid at school that's listening, or a kid at college who doesn't know what to do, or doesn't know what to do with the skills they've got, like, looking at the creative industries, because there will be an opportunity for you doing something that you love to do 100%, because there's so many different avenues you can go down as well.
Yeah, and I think that the creative industry are very loose in how people get into it, i.e. like, I'd be happy to take an assistant if the job needed one, and I'd be happy to grab someone straight out of uni and be like, come with me, you like doing things you like composing things in a certain way, hop in, let's go. And I think that it's not so stringent, and if that's the right word, but it's not so like structured in like, you've got to go a certain way to get into this job, or you've got to jump through certain hoops to get here. Like, you've just got to go in and graft and try stuff.
100%. And I think even my uni experience, I hadn't seen a call sheet until, I got into TV. I didn't know what a new starter form was. Like, I didn't know you had to do your own taxes. I didn't know, like, how I could do 3 years on a course. And no disrespect, I think there's, again, a lot of people have been on this podcast and said, the only thing they got out of uni was, the friends they met, or, for me, I met my wife, and I learned how to live on my own. I learned how to do, look after myself and be a little bit independent, manage money. But in terms of what I got out of uni was, everyone thinks, especially on a film course, everyone thinks they're going to leave and be a DOP, or they're going to be, everyone wants to be a DOP and a director, The reality is, mate, you're fucking not. You're gonna get on set and you're gonna get told to make tea and coffee, because that's where you need to start. Unless you've got the money behind you to fund your own film, and you want to be that guy that got, to go make your own film. But the reality is, and no one told me that. No one said, Stu, mate, you're gonna leave here after 3 years, and you're gonna go make tea and coffee. But if someone had told me, listen, Stu, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to camera operate? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And if they said, say, camera, I'm going to use camera operating as an example. If they'd have asked me, do you want to be a camera operator? Yes. Okay, cool. Right. This is the route you need to go down. You need to contact, I'm going to use an example of Procam down in London, go and work in the kit house there, because what they do, and what their sort of platform, what their sort of route is you go work in the kit house, you learn the kit inside out. So you learn every single camera, you learn how to clean it, how to maintain it, how to look after it. So when it comes in from a job, you clean it, you maintain it, you know how it works inside out. You learn the different camera bodies, what the settings do, you learn how to reset them, you learn how to set them up, and then you learn it all in the kit house, and then you're out on jobs as a camera assistant. Then you're starting to network. And then from there, you're then starting to get into shooting. Maybe you're shooting assistant or something like that. And then basically, by the time you've done maybe I would have been better off doing 3 years in it, starting from the bottom of the kit house, and then coming out as a cam operator, then doing 3 years at uni, because you've learned everything from scratch, and you've built the connections, and you're ready for it. But no one tells you that, and I'm just thinking, is that on purpose? And I don't mean to dig out the education system here, but I think sometimes, I think there needs to be a better conversation about the routes people want to go down, and the reality behind it. It's probably why I've never been asked back to do a talk at my uni, because I would just tell them the truth. So it's very frustrating, and like I say, to not know what a call sheet was, The only one bit of good, I had one very, very good lecturer at uni, a guy called Clive Tong, who came in, and he'd been trying to develop his own film for 7 years. So it was very, very aware of the reality of it. And he would have really honest and conversations with us. And he would give us real things to do, how to, do like fake a steady cam shot by using a skateboard, or using a wheelchair that was in the accessible toilet or something like that. Like those little guerrilla camera tricks. That was really fun. And he also said, basically, if you ever get on set, basically, a hungry crew's an angry crew, basically. So never, if you're looking after a budget, never sacrifice on food, because that will be the worst mistake you ever make. And genuinely, it's probably the one of the best bits of advice from a producer perspective is just feed your crew, because they appreciate it. So that was a nice bit of advice to get, I guess. Yeah,
I mean, like, coming from a woman who gets fairly hangry, I am always there for crew food, and I've always got snacks, and my kit bag has snacks in it, my bum bag has snacks in it, my backpack has snacks in it. My other half is always laughing. He's like, you've got snacks in your glove box, in your bum bag, you've got them all over your car, in your pockets. And I'm like, yes, otherwise I'll get hangry, can't think, can't do stuff properly. And especially if you're on TV where your days are 12, 14-hour days, right? And you stood around and you're busy for like a few hours, and then you stood while you're filming, and then you're busy again. Like, you definitely need to keep people like fed and hydrated 100%.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I learned straight away, you know, from being a runner. You know, just watching people, like you're watching the camera person, you know, filming, especially in reality world, right? It's not on a tripod, it's on someone's shoulder. It's run and gun. You know, they're capturing everything, and usually it's one person, you know, with a PD who's next to them. You know, you've got your soundy and you've got your cam up, and they're capturing everything, and it's just wild. You know, you've got mad Geordies running around pissed, basically, and it's just nuts. It's carnage. You know, it is just sit back and watch it, and for me to reflect and look back now, I'm like, fucking hell, that's wild. But you watch him and you go, fuck me, he must be thirsty, you know, and it's just having that empathetic, you know, outlook on, you know, that person's going to be hungry, or it's winter, so I'm just going to get some Lemsips from the shop when I go do my run, you know, and I'm going to keep them in my bag, you know, or I'm just going to, on the way in the morning, I've got my float, I'm just going to get people bacon sandwiches on the way in. Or, you know, when I was on Towie, you know, weirdly, you know, when I was on Towie, it was like a little, your car was your basically little mobile office because you drove everywhere as a runner. And one of the first things I did was, because you basically had to have a kettle on you as a runner. So basically you had to carry your own kettle, right? And you had to carry all your own cups, and you had to carry all your own tea, coffee, sugar, sweetener. And I was like, how the fuck did I do this? And we were getting some props from one of the things. And I was like, mate, it was honestly one of the best things I've ever done as a runner. And I hope the runners on Towie are still doing it, because I'm sure I'll pretty much set this up right. I was known as the kid who had the tea making suitcase, right? So I got one of those mini travel suitcases, you know, the little ones that you use for like the overnight bag. I got one of them in there, my kettle, all my bits, and then in the zip on the other side was all my cups, you know, everything was laid out, tea, coffee, sugar, and that I wheeled that absolutely everywhere. And everyone knew when I was wheeling that in that the hot drinks were ready, you know, and it was just probably one of the best and easiest decisions, because I wasn't carrying it everywhere, you know, it was just there and it was on wheels. And I was like, mate, I've just saved myself like 7 trips to the car to get all of this stuff into this mad nightclub. And yeah, it was, hats off to myself. I'm blowing smoke with my own ass, but yeah, it was one of the little hacks. So if any runner is working on any show and you have to carry teas and coffees, just get yourself a little suitcase and stick it in there, because it'll save your shoulders, save your back, and it'll save you a lot of time.
It's amazing how these little suitcases work so hard for us in the creative world, because the amount of times it's mental, because I've been down to London and I've had like 2 suitcases, one's been kit, one's been full of clothes, and people look at you like, you're all right there, hun. And then you just pop a suitcase open and outfits are flying out, pins are flying out, bras, pants, whatever, everything. And then someone goes, I've got a bit of a blister. I'm like, yeah, got that. It's like I get called studio mum because my kit's got everything in it.
100%. And it goes, you know, and it comes with experience, I think, you know, an understanding of, you know, we've all been in that situation where you wish someone would just have a Lemsip in their bag, or just some paracetamol or a Barocca, you know, because the first thing I did when I know crews had a heavy night out was I'd have some Barocca in my runner's bag for the next morning, because I know 100% someone's going to need one. And, you know, again, you know, being able to just take it all in when you're a runner, just, you know, stand at the back when you sort of entry level and you're just sort of watching it all happen, just, you know, just take it all in and look how people operate, look at what, you know, what's winding people up and all that stuff. And I just tried to take as much of that in as possible, you know, mainly because I was trying to figure out which route I wanted to go down. You know, there's so many different routes you can go down within what we do. And me trying to figure out which route that was. And a lot of that was just taking a step back and going, do I want to be a soundy? And I'd watch the soundy for, you know, a couple of hours, or, you know, do I want to be a camera operator? Right? I'd watch the camera operator for a bit, or director, or whoever it is, or watch the props department, or watch, you know, the set builders, and I would just be watching people constantly. And then through that, you know, I'd know that that person's a little bit tired today. Maybe I'll just offer them a cup of tea, or they might need a bit of coffee, and just taking it all in. I just found it so fascinating, just being able to watch it all sort of unfold. And I learned loads, man. I learned loads just doing that.
I think there's something to be said about being observant on set as well, because when you're in the thick of the shit sometimes, it's so good that someone just taps you on the shoulder and is like, here you go, here's a snack, here's a cup of tea, or, you know. And I find it fascinating as well when I'm on like big sets and I'm watching people and I'm like, oh, okay, they're doing that, and I love people watching anyway, so I'm a bit nosy like that. But from your perspective, it must have been so nice to just be like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, they're doing that. And like, did you ever go up to people and just be like, oh, so how do you do that? Were you like quite inquisitive in that way as well?
I think, I guess, like I was saying earlier on, man, it was difficult in that sort of reality world because of how quick things were moving. But I very quickly, really sort of liked the inner workings of like a camera, basically, and like I really liked, seeing how the kit was put together and watching the kit being built and stuff like that. So a lot of the time, I tried not to bother the sort of the DOPs or anything like that, just because I know, it could be quite a high stressful environment. So what I would do is I would attach myself to sort of the cam assist, and see if I could get some information from there. I learned that pretty quick, and then from there, then all of a sudden I've been invited out to, not that it's clicky or anything like that, but then I was invited out to, the cam guys are going out for, some food, and Stu, do you want to come? And I was like, yeah, man, sick. And my first job on Geordie Shore, like the main DOP that I was working with, he got me my first sort of utility knife, basically, because he knew I like cameras, and it was like one of the key things, that he was bought from his DP, and I was like, this is lovely, man. I like this. So it was cameras, and that basically was what I sort of, I felt comfortable around, that department, and then. And then I was looking at buying my own camera and things like that, and that's kind of where the love of cameras sort of came from, and being looked after a little bit. And then, like I was saying before, I got onto a job where my mate, now one of my best mates, Ricky, he really took me under his wing, and he taught me loads, and I was hands on from there, and I think it's really important to find somebody who you feel comfortable with, who's spending that time to just teach you those things that are really important. And sometimes it's what they wish they were taught, or that what they wish they were told, or they're passing things down of what they were told. And I think we've all got our different way of passing things on to the next person and paying it forward a little bit. And I think, I think once I felt comfortable doing that with people, I'm a pretty ballsy person a lot of the time, but also, quite observant, like I was saying before, of who to approach and when. You're not going to approach them in the middle of a shot and be like, what are you doing there, mate? And there's a way to do things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Last thing you want to do when someone's about to say action is like, what are you doing? So, maybe spend, like, learn a little bit and, pick your timings, and do yourself a favor. Don't start asking for jobs at a wrap party. I think that's one of the worst things people do, is they wait until a wrap party and then they're asking, is there a job? Build the relationships and have those conversations naturally. Don't force it at a wrap party when someone's pissed, because ultimately they're going to want to hear that anyway, and it never sort of builds to anything.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we've had long jobs on and they've done like a wrap party at the end, I find it quite awkward, because I love working with people and I love working closely with a team, but I kind of draw the line at like getting really drunk with like work crews. It's kind of, I love being social, but on a smaller basis really than that. So I always find them a bit awkward. So for me, just then when you were saying that people were asking for jobs at wrap parties, I was like, oh God, I wouldn't be able to do that.
I mean, their intentions are like, coming from a really good place, and I think it's probably the perfect time because it's a bit more relaxed and, the drinks are flowing and stuff like that. But the amount of time, I mean, I was guilty, right, early days of, trying to talk to the exec who, is just crewing up for the next job and trying to have that conversation there. It's like, bro, just wait a couple of days and email, just tell them how much fun you've had on the shoot you've just done. Is an opportunity on the show they're going on to next, and just enjoy the chat at the wrap party, enjoy the fun, because no one wants to talk about work, no one wants to talk shop in that environment. And ultimately, like, as social as I am in this sort of environment, you put me in a room with like 60 odd people, I'm only 5 foot tall for a start, so I get quite socially anxious in like clubs and stuff like that. So, I'm very sort of particular about who I spend that night with. And it can come across as quite cliquey, but I'm really not a cliquey person. If you come and talk to me, it's just because I feel quite reserved in that environment. So again, it comes to that thing of feeling comfortable with a certain group of people. And like I said, it's not me being cliquey. It's just, I've just found my comfort zone a little bit, and I'm comfortable there, and, I'll spread, and I'll talk to anybody, but in those environments, I kind of attached to somebody. I'm like making almost like an unwritten, like, can you look after me for the night? Because I just feel weird talking shop to like, or talking like real small talk to like people I've not really conversed with for the last 6 weeks. So yeah, I do find them quite awkward as well.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, I am so chatty, but then like on a big scale, I'm like daunted by it, and I'm like, oh Jesus, like, or I'm exactly the same. And there's certain kind of not so much hierarchies, but sometimes you're like, if you're a junior, or and then there's people who have been in the industry for a long time, it's like, oh, I can go and have a glass of wine or whatever and chat to them, but then it's really daunting, isn't it? And I just I feel the same. I get socially anxious in those situations.
And sometimes it's like you haven't worked with them every day for the last 6 weeks, so you can't have a bit of a laugh about that long day that you did and sort of bond over that. And you end up like, I'm sat there and you go, how's things? Yeah, good. How are you? Yeah, I'm good. How'd you find the shoot? Yeah, fantastic. Great. You kind of go do the next one? Absolutely. And then you kind of just sort of nodding in like awkwardness, going, have a good night. And then you kind of just off and like, fuck me, that was horrendous. So yeah, I try and avoid, if the conversations happen naturally, I can't force myself. I'm still like that now. I'm still like that at Christmas party sometimes, and just really struggle to find that that sort of the menial side of the chat. I don't know if that's me just being a dick. I hope it's not me being a dick. I just really struggle with finding those points of conversation with people that you don't necessarily, talk to every day. So yeah, it's a weird one.
Yeah, do you know what's helped me with that, and definitely my other half, who is can be like really anxious, is getting a dog. Right, so hear me out, but you end up having what I call like just random chit chat with other dog walkers, because they're like, morning, oh, how's your dog? Oh, and we've got a bit of a reactive dog. She's a rescue dog. So we've had these conversations where she's like laid on the floor because she's seen another person with another dog. And people walk past you and like, oh, not want to walk today, not want to do this. And you're kind of forced into that like little menial conversations. So then it becomes a bit easier. Even though my husband hates it, he's like, oh, for God's sake, I don't want to talk to everybody about their dog. But it definitely helps. So if you're in the market for a dog, go rescue a dog. That'll help with that.
I mean, I would love to feel more comfortable in those situations about, just chatting about the weather or chatting about something that isn't, work. Because I always find myself in those situations just referring back to work, about a project you just worked on, or the next thing that's coming, or, that really good bit of feedback that you got, and it's like, I don't want to talk about work all the time. I want to talk about something else. Like, is there a film? And, sometimes it's that initial, bit of conversation that I need to get better at, for sure. So it's not me being rude to anybody that I've just sort of taken. I find myself in the smoking area a lot of the time. I social smoke. I used to smoke all the time, but I social smoke now. So then it's like, I'll come in a 5-minute chat with like a couple of people, and I'm going for a smoke, and then I'm just in and out. You'll just see me, or I'll just park in the smoking area, just have that chat with people that's just rotating in and out of the smoking area, and I'm just the guy that's there going, having another one, So yeah. But I am, it's something I'm definitely like trying to work on, in terms of being a bit more comfortable in those situations. So maybe it is getting a dog. We'll see.
Yeah, that's my only advice, is getting a dog, 4-legged friend.
Everyone's comfort, I think, isn't it, for sure?
Yeah. So I've got one last question for you, and you can answer it in whichever way you want. Some people answer it in a personal way, some people answer it in with regards to their career, but what inspires you?
I knew this question was coming because I've been listening to the podcast, so I knew this one was going. I try not to prepare anything to make it as sort of as natural as possible. I have thought about it a little bit, and it'd be easy to say, like some famous film director that I really aspire to, and they do inspire me. Good films really do, like really, get my creative juices flowing, and I really want to go and make something and do something. Whether that a Christopher Nolan, or a Spielberg, or Wes Anderson, or something like that. But when I really think about it, what. Because I kind of broke it down and sort of taken it as like, what inspires me to want to go and make something? What inspires me to want to go and write something? What inspires me to want to, get my camera out of the pelly case that's been sat there for 6 months? And it's literally listening to people or watching people on YouTube talking about what it is they love, and seeing people that have a passion for what they do. I watch a guy on YouTube who, like, he's obsessed with Lego and builds random shit out of Lego and absolutely loves it. And every time I watch one of his videos, I'm like, mate, like, that's giving me an idea for a short film, or like, I might just try some stop motion, or like something like that. Or there's another guy that likes making cricket bats, and he loves it. And it's cricket. I like sport, and so I'll just watch some guy doing cricket, and there's just some banter in there, and that'll spur something on. And I think I break it down, it's literally just listening and watching people that clearly love doing what they do, and that's what inspires me to do what I want to do, because it kind of pushes and motivates me. Like, that person loves making, I don't know, banana bread or something, and they're talking about it and they can love it. And I'm like, mate, I love, making stuff. I love like writing something and then seeing it go from paper to, screen. Like, I love it, and I love seeing that process, and it'll just encourage me to message a mate and be like, should we go and shoot something? Or, it'll encourage me to message someone and say, can I come and do an interview with you? Or it'll, spark a conversation with my missus and we'll talk about doing something. Or it'll encourage me to talk to a theatre friend who, are you still doing that thing? Shall we do it together? And it always just, there's something off the back of watching someone talk about what they do and love what they do that makes me want to do what I want to do, basically. And that's kind of what inspires me, basically. Is hearing people love what they do.
That's such a nice answer, because you're so inspired by everybody else's passion. That's such a lovely answer.
Honestly, it's things like that. I say, like I say, it's, someone making Lego, it's someone, making a cricket bat, it's like someone loving banana bread, or, like, I watch a lot of outdoor cooking for some reason. That's all over my algorithm at the moment, and seeing them do it and like love food, and I think, yeah, man, that person is literally doing every day, or seems to be doing every day, what it is that they love, and that's what I want to do, and that's where I want to be, is just to wake up every day and love what I do and be happy with a smile on my face. And yeah, so that's kind of what gets me up in the morning. It's what kind of pushes me on and inspires me to do what I want to do.
That's such a lovely answer. It's so nice. And I think I've had such a nice chat to you tonight, and I've really enjoyed hearing your journey, and it's so different to other people that I've spoken to as well. And it's just been a pleasure to hear your story today.
You too. Thanks so much. I really enjoyed it, actually, because it's the first time I've actually had the opportunity to just talk for a bit about where I've been and what I've done. It's actually a really nice opportunity for me to reflect on, where I've been for the last, 10, 12 years, whatever it's been. So thanks so much for having me on.
You're more than welcome. And you should be very, very proud of your entire journey, because it's incredible to hear where you've come, and to hear the tips about the brew suitcase are, chef's kiss.
Thanks so much, mate. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate, follow and share, as it really helps this little podcast out. And if you have found value in the podcast and you have the means to, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. This will help keep the podcast going. Join me next week for another fantastic guest. Bye!